listening to Real Guy Radio.
How many pro wrestling news websites do you visit to get your daily news? 3, 4, maybe 5? Do yourself a favor and make that number 1. WrestleChat.net, the only professional wrestling news site that brings you all wrestling news all day long, and is home of the critically acclaimed Still Real to Us podcast, starring former CZW, ROH, and ECW announcer Eric Gargiulo and the champ Jeff Beck. That's WrestleChat.net. WrestleChat, it's where it's at.
It's still
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Still Real to Us Show. Episode number 95, December 8th, 2011. I am the champ, Jeff Peck. And joining me this week, back in the saddle once again, a proud member of the STRU crew, and world-renowned cell phone videographer, the one and only, big-time Benny Lopez. Benny, what is up, my man?
Hey, sir, not much. Just enjoying the beautiful winter weather.
Yeah, it's awesome that winter is back upon us here, which, I don't know about you, but when it comes to, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about this now. Actually, we're probably going to talk a lot about this. When you look at, like, the winter time, the holidays, wrestling in December, with the exception of, I guess, Tribute for the Troops now, which is a big deal, I always have looked at wrestling as like a really, really slow month during the holidays, and rightfully so. I mean, what are most people watching wrestling during the holidays? You know, maybe they're out doing shopping, storyline's not as big, it's just before Royal Rumble, they're getting ready for the push for WrestleMania 28. Have you ever gotten that feel that wrestling during the holidays, like once Thanksgiving hits, like after Survivor Series, then to Christmas, and maybe even to New Year's, just wrestling is dead for like 6 weeks?
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I definitely, right around Royal Rumble time is when it picks up and they go hard until WrestleMania. So it definitely quiets down.
Yeah, it's just really, really slow. And before the show here, Benny and I were talking about what we were going to talk about in this week's show. Because, to be honest, there is no big, real news items. There's just a whole bunch of different small news items. We're going to take a look at what the hell's going on with Brodus Clay. The rise of Daniel Bryan the last couple of weeks, various wrestlers taking shots at former companies they worked for, or other co-workers, Booker T back in the ring once again, and that's starting to get going. Some former indie stars now under contract with the WWE that could be called up. Just saw a little news item about Chris Hero that we could talk about today. But I asked Benny, like, what do you want to talk about? What should we open with on this week's show? Because there's very, very little, big news items to talk about. And he said, let's talk about what most fans, at least on my Twitter feed, and I have to agree with them on this one, was the horrible episode of Monday Night Raw. And I don't know if you felt this way, Benny. I wasn't a fan of this past Monday Night's Raw, obviously, and neither were you. But I thought the week before, the Monday Night Raw the week before was a really good episode, top to bottom. You had that CM Punk Dolph Ziggler match. I thought that was great. But then they followed up with that just shithole of a show, and it was just horrible. Did you feel the same way that last week's Raw was great, but this past Monday night was just not good at all?
Yeah, no, it definitely felt like that. Last week's Raw was top notch. It was very enjoyable to watch. I think what softened the blow for this Raw being so bad was that, terrible live SmackDown. But either way, this Raw was just terrible. And I don't normally bash, wrestling too much, but man, this Raw was it was hard to watch.
Now, let's go back to what you said there before about SmackDown, because on last Monday night, I was actually pretty pumped for the live SmackDown. I followed the American Dragon from his indie days, ROH, wherever else he has wrestled, IWA Mid-South, wherever the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, now known as Daniel Bryan. I've followed him as a wrestling fan, and now this was kind of like his breakout night, this cage match with Mark Henry. And I can't even believe I'm saying this, but a cage match for the World Heavyweight title between Mark Henry and Daniel Bryan had me pumped. And I had the same feelings as you. I mean, the show, for the most part, the stuff with Randy Orton and David Otunga was horrible. Mick Foley has just become a shell of himself and such a cheesy character. Did you feel, from what you were, hearing heading in from Monday Night Raw into the live SmackDown on Tuesday, that we were actually going to get a really good SmackDown, being that it was live, this holiday special bullcrap? I mean, I really thought it was going to be a great show, and like you, I was let down. Or did you go in with the premise like, man, this is just SmackDown, and with the exception of Brian Henry, or maybe nothing at all, I'm just not interested in this show?
No, I really enjoy SmackDown. That's one of the highlights wrestling wise for me in my week. I am one of the, I guess, a few people out here, like, I actually watch it when it's on. If I'm home, you know what I mean? I rarely, I DVR it just in case, but I rarely catch the DVR. Pretty much watch it on time. I enjoy SmackDown. It always has pretty good matches on there. It's a good wrestling show. I was excited because, it was another live SmackDown. I really would love for them to go live on Tuesdays. I don't have anything else to watch on Tuesdays. I think it's perfect for my schedule. But I was looking forward to Daniel Bryan and Mark Henry, and that match did deliver. Everything else, though, just fell completely short in my eyes. That match definitely delivered. I enjoyed that match particularly.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. Bryan and Henry definitely did deliver. They told a great story in the ring. Mark Henry has, and this is one of those deals where I can't even believe I'm saying this. If I'm sitting down Jeff 2011 with Jeff 2010 last year, and I'm sitting down saying, listen, dude, in a year, you're going to be loving Mark Henry. I'd be like, shit, no. I mean, that guy is, what was he doing at the time? Tag teaming with MVP? I mean, he was doing a horrible face gimmick. I love the Silverback stuff from a couple years prior, but I mean, this was still sexual chocolate Mark Henry, and he's kind of shed that former persona and really done well this past year. And they've really done a lot with Daniel Bryan, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit here. But SmackDown itself, the live SmackDown, the Sheamus Hornswoggle stuff was just way too PG for me. If you're making Sheamus into a mega face, and I get you're trying to reboot this whole Hornswoggle character, had him talk, and he won the Battle Royal and all this stuff, it didn't work for me. That whole angle, I mean, little kids probably loved it. I didn't. The Randy Orton, David Otunga stuff was just horrible. Otunga may not be the greatest wrestler in the ring, but the stuff they've done with him lately with backstage vignettes with John Laurinaitis on Raw have been pretty great. He's playing that lawyer character very, very well. Go figure, he's a Harvard graduate with a law degree. I thought he's done great. Orton has put over Rhodes and Barrett and all these other guys in recent weeks, and I'm not putting Otunga in the same category as that, but I figured from what we've seen with Orton in recent weeks that we would get a little bit more from him, and just specifically looking at that Orton-Otunga stuff, Otunga just looked like a jobber, while Orton is just that megastar. Did you get that same feeling? Do you think maybe Orton should have given a little bit more offense to Otunga?
No, Otunga is a jobber. You know what I mean? I think, and that's his role. I doubt we're going to, especially with this lawyer gimmick going on, I doubt we're going to see him wrestle too much anymore anyway. I think, it'll be one-off things like you're seeing now, more backstage stuff. I think that's what he's suited for. And yeah, he is a jobber. I think, people, want to see him get beat up. So Orton beating him up, I thought, that made sense. I wasn't griping with that too much.
Okay, I can see where you're coming from, but I always felt like that they're at least going back the NXT days, and he's not like the greatest in-ring worker, but he has the look of a WWE superstar. Just would have thought it would have been a little bit better for him to maybe get a punch or two into Randy Orton.